right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody to the Human Service Background Study Eligibility Task Force for Friday, September 9th, 2022. Mr. Vogel, do we have quorum today?
Madam Chair, this is a large enough group. I think I want to do a formal roll call to determine that, if you don't mind.
Perfect. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Basham. Ms. Basham. Senator Champion. Senator Champion. Ms. Dawson. Ms. Dawson. Mr. Esme. Mr. Esme. Ms. Evans.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Geffen. Mr. Geffen. Mr. Hanson.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Huntley.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. Mr. Urban. Mr. Urban. Ms. Kaser.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Kammer.
Present.
Lieutenant Knotts. Lieutenant Knotts. Judge Kulik. Judge Kulik. Senator Matthews. Senator Matthews. Ms. Mattson.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mueller.
Present.
Thank you. Inspector General Modi.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Page.
Present.
Mr. Page. There we go. Mr. Burtis.
Present.
Representative Robbins. Representative Robbins. Mr. Sandoval. Mr. Sandoval. Judge Satterback.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Sherlock.
Present.
Mr. Tatum. Mr. Tatum. Ms. Williamson. Ms. Williamson. All right, Madam Chair. Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Williamson. All right, Madam Chair, we have 13 members present. That actually is quorum.
Perfect. So I just want to note that a copy of the July 8th and August 12th minutes have been posted to the task force website. I would just ask if anybody has any corrections. All right, with no corrections or objections, I declare that the minutes from July and August are approved. We don't need a motion or vote to do that. We just will approve them. And if people want to take a peek at them, they are up on the website. All right, so we talked about having a lived experience today, but we're actually going to move that to another time. There was just some miscommunication today about that, so we'll move that to the next to a future meeting. There are a couple things that we wanted to talk about today. Roy, do you want to do the data analysis? The data analysis presentation, and then we should probably talk a little bit about scheduling for the report writing. And then are any of the other chairs here?
Madam Chair, Ms. Williamson is here from the data subcommittee, and then as you've noted, Mr. Kammer is here from the data analysis subcommittee.
Okay, so let's do updates first. And so Roy, if you are ready, and if you're not, then we can.
I am ready. So I am going to share my screen. Last time that I was here, we had walked you through a number of different pieces of data from data set 4. One of the areas we had not finished at that point in time was the 15-year disqualification analysis. We've since been able to finish that. So I just want to walk you through this slide here. Again, just to take you back to what we're looking at here, on the left in blue, we have 2018. On the right in an orangish color, we have 2019. So in 2018 here, just looking at this particular table, what we have is we've looked at the top reconsideration requests by type. And really how we've done that is this first column, or I should say column 2, looks at the percentage of total reconsideration requests. This is not the percentage of total disqualifications. This is reconsideration requests. So the most frequent type of reconsideration request in 2018 was controlled substances crime in the 5th degree. And I should say that's within this 15-year disqualification category. So that's what we're looking at in ultimately column 2. And then what we look at over here is out of those requests, out of the number of requests that were actually done for that particular area, what percentage were ultimately determined eligible to work in the end? One of the things that we have talked about as a data analysis subcommittee is, my gosh, if we have some of these that are so frequently being determined eligible to work, and again, eligible to work is a collapsed category with several different areas, but ultimately being determined eligible to work, is that a spot, that we have an opportunity for suggesting some change? So for instance, here, controlled substances crime in the 2nd degree, you'll see not a lot of reconsideration requests submitted here. We had 35. It was, relatively small number. But out of those, 31 of them were determined eligible to work. That's 89% of those individuals who submitted requests. So that's the type of information we're looking at. What I'd encourage you in other committees, to also be thoughtful about, like, what's this telling us if we have, consistent sort of high percentages ultimately being determined eligible to work. 2019, you can take a look here. Also kind of at the top here, the most frequent reconsideration requests submitted would be those controlled substance crimes in the 5th degree. The same layout here, and you can see of the reconsideration requests, for instance, when we take a look at, check forgery, offering the forged check in 2019, 87% of those that submitted a reconsideration request ultimately were determined eligible to work in some way. That's what we're working on. Mr. Vogel's actually working on some tables for us to build these out a little bit further to kind of take us back and look at bigger picture. So that's one of the things we'll be doing at our next data analysis meeting. We also are going to take a look at domestic abuse back in data set 3 and work on creating some visual, some graphics as well for that and doing a little bit of analysis. That's what we're working on. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And anything from anyone else with the data analysis committee, individuals who were there that you'd want to contribute based on some of the conversations we've had.
I just wonder if it would be a benefit to look at the 10-year and 7-year just briefly again to refresh people's memories.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder of, like, what's on the top.
Yeah, why don't we go back to 7-year first? So what we saw being most frequently submitted for reconsideration in 2018 and 2019 in the 7-year category was theft. You can see significant, number of individuals doing that. So 31% of the requests that were reconsideration requests that were submitted in 2018 were regarding theft, and in 2019, 36%. Domestic assault, also, comprised a fair number of the requests being submitted. Looking at, these top 10 lists in terms of how frequently these individuals were determined eligible to work. One where we had actually spent some time is issuance of dishonored checks. So what you can see here is, 57 people submitted reconsideration requests for issuance of dishonored checks in 2018. 51 of those people were determined eligible to work, so that's 89%. Also fairly high on the list in 2019. You see we had 115 and submit reconsideration requests. Out of that, 110 were determined eligible to work, so that was actually 96%. That's again pretty significant. People who are submitting are being determined eligible to work. We don't know any more of the context of that, but we can say there's certain areas where it's fairly likely that if they submit a reconsideration request, they are being determined eligible to work. So I think that's, certainly something that I think deserves, continued conversation in our committees that we might consider focusing on in our recommendations and final report. 10-year disqualification analysis, looking at the top here, we've got theft comprising, the most, oops, I'll pause for a moment. Ms. Mattson, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I should know this, but do these represent distinct individuals, or could it possibly be the same individual asking for a reconsideration a second time because they moved employers?
Thank you. So I think the data, and Mr. Vogel help back me up here. We weren't looking at individuals. We were looking at, these are all distinct count. So I believe these people could be ultimately considered more than once if they've had more than one request.
And I'm sure I've said this before, but from the employer community perspective, we don't see a lot of value in making people have to go through the reconsideration process a second or a third time to advance their career, or switch employers or what have you. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But anyway, I just wanted, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, jumping here to 10-year, again, what we saw at the top in terms of most common reconsideration requests would be theft. You can scroll down here, you'll see in 2018, we had enough of the less than 10s. We weren't able to do a top 10 list. We got a top 8, but certainly can take a look through there. Then looking at percentages of those that were determined eligible work, we got those in the right-hand columns. I'll just say here again, issuance of dishonored checks. We can't tell you what it looked like in 2018. There just weren't enough of them. But in 2019, where did it go? 93% were ultimately, of those who submitted a request for reconsideration, were determined eligible to work. Ms. Evans, was that a thorough enough account of 7-year and 10-year, or anything else you'd like to hone in on?
Yep. And just another, I just had another one come across my desk yesterday. Somebody got, denied their appeal, and going over, I asked them to send me their birth date so I could look up, and got permission to look up it was all misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor stuff. And then asked if they would send me their application. And part of the reason that they got denied their appeal was the fact that they didn't spend the time on the application. They didn't, I feel like because their crimes weren't so serious, they had this maybe mindset that, it wasn't as big of a deal. And so, the letters that they said, I'm fairly confident that had someone assisted them in their application for appeal, that it probably would have gotten approved instead of denied. And that's part of this, when I look at, this theft, that 72% of them got denied, why did they get denied? Was it recency? Was it we don't have that data? And
Madam Chair,
yep.
that 72% would actually represent people with successful applications. So
Yep.
in this case, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the 28% of people that didn't get it, why didn't they get it? And sometimes it's, and I guess I'm speaking a little bit to process or whatever. But the ones that I've seen, and I help people every month, I get a handful of folks that are asking for help with these things. And oftentimes it's about resources, right? Do they know to answer the questions? Do they know to send in, the right kind of letters? We do trainings on this stuff to really help people, and people with it's not that they didn't do the work to prove rehabilitation. It's that they don't know how to say the right things or the right words to let them know that they did the work. And so that's when I look at this, that's a piece of it for me, that it's hard to like justify these numbers. And so, and I'm just talking about it because like just yesterday I had another one come across my desk that was a little and it was some of these things, right? And that person's been sober now 5 years and is in school and doing the work and like trying to get past all of this stuff and like roadblocks for wrongfully obtaining assistance, when that same lack of education that person has to fill out this paperwork is the same lack of education that they had that led to the wrongfully obtaining assistance. That was the case to begin with. And so some of these are just, it's tough. It's tough. So
And
I would
I
just
would
add
say
that.
there's an equal amount of frustration for employers not knowing how to navigate this space and help potential candidates. They want to try to mitigate that, yet they don't want to be in their personal life too much, and how you navigate that. And this is evolving, right, because of workforce pressures. So you have an appetite of employers that are now like, well, maybe I need to be about helping this person, but where's the boundary line, and what do I do because I'm not resourced or equipped? And it's not just the employer. It's every employer, that the healthcare employer that individual seeks work at. So it can be multiplied.
Yep, it's hard because then where do we draw the line with protecting like the property and stuff of the folks that we've served? And so it's yep. Any other thoughts about the data that we've looked at this last couple of meetings?
Ms. Chair, I'm wondering if it would be possible for the disqualification subcommittee to have those numbers integrated into our spreadsheet that we're looking at for the individual crimes. I think that would be super informative. As if we know that people are, getting licensed despite some of these, it might tell us that a particular crime might be more appropriate for a 5-year disqualification rather than a longer one.
Good idea, Max. Mr. Page. Good idea, Mr. Page. Can you do that, Mr. Vogel?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll get started on that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that would be super helpful for us to know at what rate are they being reconsidered to begin with. I think that's a great idea. I think that was one of the reasons we did it to begin with. So having that data readily available as we're looking at stuff. Looking at issuance of a dishonored check, which is writing your own checks, looking at the fact that they're getting set aside at a 90% rate, like that matters. So, yep. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Kammer. So I think looking at, December 16th is our date that we need to have our final report done, which is 3 months from now. I know we had talked about kind of, we talked about a couple of different things. I think we talked about having each group kind of have a few people get together to get the writing done. And then we also talked about having a separate thing to do the writing. And so that's correct, right, Mr. Vogel?
Yes, Madam Chair. I've heard both discussions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I think having some sort of schedule, we have a couple of topics still left to discuss. One of them is accountability. We went back to every week or every 2 weeks for disqualifications, because that's taking an awful lot more time than we intended. And then so I think we're really beginning to wrap stuff up, but I think we need a schedule to start working on the report, I think simultaneously with the stuff that we've because in the midst of that, we're going to have to start coming back to this larger group to make decisions about stuff. And so which means we may need to start meeting every other week here as well. So I don't know what that discussion looks like here, but I think we need to start talking about it, because that would mean just a October, November, December meeting technically, if we stay every month in this larger group.
Madam Chair, just to clarify.
Every other week. We meet every other week here. Got it.
Yeah.
So it's 6.
Yeah.
We just did once a month for the summer, right? So that's 6. So we have 6 more meetings in here to come to some consensus and then agree on the report. And so I would just like to open it up for discussion about a schedule for writing the report. Yes, Representative Mueller.
Hi, I'm fine with whatever schedule the group decides, but I just want to make sure, I think I highlighted this kind of way back when we first started meeting, which was to please make sure that whatever recommendations we're looking at as a group, you have time to go back to the organization that you are here representing. Because what often happens at the legislature is individuals will be appointed to committees and they'll agree to something, and then we'll draft legislation based on the group, what they want, and then the individuals' organizations will come to the Capitol and oppose or raise concerns about those things. So it's just, whatever we decide for timing, it's really important that we give folks time to take those back to their organizations.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, based on that, like we kind of need to start wrapping stuff up. So, thoughts? How about, like, should we come to a consensus about the writing of the report? Are we going to do that in individual subcommittees, and then, or are we going to form another subcommittee to do the writing?
Would it make sense to have draft bullet, high level content so that we could use that to talk with our respective organizations? And then, writing so that it is easy to read and people can understand. I feel like that can come later after, we've done those connection points, and, writing could go up until the deadline if we need it, if we agreed on the content. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Kaser.
Thank you. I would maybe propose that each of the subcommittees work and bring forward some recommendations to this larger group. We could set a certain deadline, but then that would give time for discussion, as well as maybe to narrow in on those high level kind of bullet points to bring back to our organizations. And then we would spend the remaining kind of larger group meetings probably narrowing in on who's going to do what and who's going to write what, and then work on that. So it sounds like we almost need to kind of have a deadline of early October to kind of have our subcommittees wrap up all of their thoughts and their recommendations.
Yep. Yep.
And
I would even
just-
say maybe a plan by the next task force meeting, and then recommendations by the early October meeting to keep us on track. Does that seem right, Mr. Vogel?
That makes sense, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, I think also knowing as organizations, if we're going to have those high level bullet points, what data can we share? Because I haven't shared a lot of the data because I don't know that it was made entirely public yet. So if we have points and data to support those points, that would be good to know, like, what's fair game to share widely in our organization.
I will just say from a DHS perspective, all the data that we provided you is public.
And
Thanks,
likewise, Madam Chair, Ms. Mattson, the data that the group has worked on in the various public meetings, for example, in data analysis subcommittee, that's been publicly available. Anyone can tune into the meeting to watch the working documents or go to the website to find complete documents.
All right. So does that, I feel like that timeline will help kind of move things along for folks. And then in the subcommittees, people could, the chairs can kind of decide if they need to start meeting more often to kind of speed things up, and that will give us, starting in early October, that will give us 2 months to get the report together.
And Madam
So-
Chair, thinking schedules, the next subcommittee meeting the next full task force meeting is scheduled for September 23rd, the one where you're contemplating coming up with that work plan. And then the next one after that is October 7th. So I'm hearing that would be the deadline that you're contemplating.
Yep,
Okay,
so to have
sounds
a work plan by the next one, and then some recommendations by early October. And we've been working on recommendations all along. It's not like it would just be kind of wrapping them up. And I think the only one that we might have some issues in is disqualifications, and that's just because it's been hard to get through them with consensus. So, which is not, I mean, it's not surprising. So, anything else folks want to discuss, or we can't hear you, Miss Williamson, you're breaking up.
Was making sure there wasn't anything needed from.
We can't hear you, Miss Williamson. Miss Williamson, I don't know if you want to text me what you want to get on the record, and I can
Madam Chair, Ms. Williamson, I've just enabled the chat function in Zoom. We typically request that members not use that so that, with the open meeting law, everyone hears what you're saying. But if you'd like to type what you'd like to get on the record, Ms. Williamson, I or Chair Evans could read that out so that the public can hear it.
Yep. Otherwise, I'll do just a brief update. What we're working on in disqualifications is just getting through the individual crimes and conduct, and kind of deciding where each of those could stand, and then talking about the time frame, where the time frame would start, if it was going to be 5 years or some other time frame. Would it start from the commission of the crime? Would it start from release from supervision? So we're having those conversations in disqualifications, and then in remedies, we're talking about some expungement stuff, and then from there we'll be moving on to the actual process of filing for like a set aside and all of that. So those are kind of updates where we're at.
And Madam Chair, Ms. Williamson actually just emailed me. She was trying to ask if you wanted to see, or if you needed anything from her, and I would presume the data subcommittee. And Ms. Williamson, I know you can't, with your spotty internet, can't necessarily speak up to correct me if that's wrong, but give me a thumbs up maybe, or a thumbs down if that's mischaracterizing you.
So there wasn't, I don't think there's any, there's no time for new data requests. But there was a data request that we've been waiting for. Do you remember what it was, Mr. Vogel? That we were kind of checking on?
Madam Chair, there was a data request placed earlier this year for quantitative data on essentially the timeline of the reconsideration process. Anything the department might be able to pull together there, and we've been in touch with the department. I haven't heard any definitive dates. I do know that it's a request that they've received and have been working on, but I can't really speak for the department otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've received that. That is a significant data request. So I don't know how much, if any, we'll be able to provide anything, because that's a very involved metric that isn't developed internally. So I know they're looking at what we might or might not be able to provide, but and it might come down that we don't have any information readily available that would be responsive. Part of it is so many system changes, so many things have happened. It's really hard to pull that all together. So on it, but I do know that we're pulling that together. And I think there's one other request that you had related to expungements. And I know our legal team is looking at that one and pulling together that information.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Modi. All right, well, and Will, just for action items, you'll get that out to the chairs, right? The timelines?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll send an update email right after this.
Okay, perfect. And then any final thoughts before I'll give you 15 minutes back of your Friday? All right. Awesome. There's lots of stuff on the website if there's community watching and they want to know what's going on in the subcommittees. There's lots of work going on in the subcommittees, and the final report will get into detail about what all of that is. So, all right. there's nothing further, the Friday, September 9th meeting of the Human Service Background Study Eligibility Task Force will come to a close. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
y'all.